Sometimes realize there's nowhere.
You have tuned into Breaking the Mask of Depression with your host, Diva with Depression.
Welcome to Breaking the Mask of Depression with me, your host, the Diva with Depression. How are you guys doing? How are you guys really doing? You know, I always have to ask that question because we always give a fake answer. Somebody says, how you doing? We say, oh, we're fine. We know that's bullshit. So I wanted to make sure that I find out how you're really, really, really doing. Because, you know, there's so much craziness going on in the world. And I know I say that every episode, but it seems like things just don't seem to be getting better. Keep getting crazier, you know, as a matter of fact. Me, myself, I'm still in my spiral space. I'm still doing my Spravato treatments. I don't know if you guys got a chance to go to my Instagram and TikTok pages, and you can see the videos that I did post about the Spravato ketamine treatments. I forget what week I am in. I think it's 15 or 16. So now I go once every other week. And I was going to do videos like constantly throughout the process, but I think that I'll do one this week when I go, and that will sort of pull everything together from the beginning to the midpoint to how I got to once every 2 weeks. I'm not sure that I'm seeing any major changes. And, you know, they're a little concerned about that, but what are you going to do? You know, I did my another Hail Mary and I'm in it. It's not horrible. You know, the process is not horrible. The people are just so nice at the place where I go to. And, you know, there's not a lot of side effects. And you sit for 2 hours, really. That's what you do. Sit for 2 hours. You take the medication and, you know, you do get loopy for a little bit, but they give you time to, you can listen to music. You can do whatever you want to read, go online. You could bring your own music, bring your own affirmations, whatever, to keep you occupied during that 2 hour time. And so, the most horrible part of the process is the taste of the medicine. You know, once you do a nasal spray, you know how you get that drip? Yeah, that's gross. But they give you lots of candy. And I also take my own candy. So, you know, we're going to see. I'm not ruling it out. I started a couple of new medications again. And so, you know, we're going to see where that goes. One of them has helped a little bit, you know, with the darkness. And I'm fortunate for that because, you know, it's pretty bad where I live in the darkness, and it's pretty dangerous. And so I don't look to be happy and jumping over rainbows. I just look to be safe and feel a little bit better. What I want to talk about today is probably it may be sensitive to some people, but listen, it's real life. And I'm exhausted. There are 49 million Black people that exist in the United States, and we're all exhausted. And we're exhausted because of life, you know, and yes, everybody experiences life and the different ups and downs and sideways. And, you know, we all watch the current events and we all live every day, you know, going out and interacting and working and playing and, you know, just being. However, it gets a little bit sicky when you are Black because, you know, on top of being human beings, we have to have a separate tunnel of vision when it comes to life. And what I mean by that is, you know, a simple thing And what got me started on this, this was something, not even the topic that I was going to discuss this week. I had something else planned, but what got me started thinking about this subject is I was watching soccer. Now, I have never ever watched soccer in my life. Started watching soccer. I mean, I've never watched it. My brothers are huge sports fanatics, but soccer was something that I never got into. Even when I had my kids playing it when they were younger, it just wasn't my cup of tea. But what started out as a joke about me talking about all the hot guys on the soccer teams caught my attention. And I started really enjoying watching the game, learning the game mostly. And, at first I was watching and enjoying and having a good time. And then it got to the point where I started seeing the bias in the scoring and the racism amongst the players. There are certain teams from certain areas that were pretty rude and disgusting to the black and brown players. And it was very obvious. And then it was also obvious that some of the referees were biased towards the blacker and browner teams. And so I got so frustrated, like there's a couple of games that I didn't watch because I was so angry. And I thought to myself, like, how fucked up is this? Is that I can't sit down and watch a sporting event without suffering from black exhaustion, or according to the main term for it. I'm going to look it up for you guys because I want to give you the exact name for it. It's called black fatigue. And what originally, you guys have probably seen, her name is Mary Frances Winters, and she's a diversity expert. And she's always talking about the different ways that we are affected. And I'm always saying that I'm exhausted. So that's where I got exhausted from. But I said, how exhausting is it? Is that I can't even fucking watch a sporting event without being affected by the racism. Okay. And the weight of the whole heaviness of living with this racism. We can't even watch a sporting event without being affected by it, affecting our mood and affecting our spirit, and then I started to write things down, and I was like, when when someone else is watching a TV show, they don't notice that there are so many TV shows that don't even have black and brown characters on it. And so how exhausting is it for us as black people to watch TV and there's nobody that nobody looks like us on the show? And the fucked up thing is that a lot of times the show is really good and the writing is good and the dialogue and everything is good, but it hurts you that the people that look like you are not on that screen, and you want to know why, And so I started putting like little things together because I said, I'm gonna write about this because I want people to understand how the black exhaustion, black fatigue affects your mental health. Because if I'm talking about me personally, here I am in a downward spiral, and I felt like soccer was something fun. And it was something new. It was something that was holding my attention, which doesn't happen much. And I was enjoying it. I was enjoying getting out of my head for a while. And then all of a sudden, here we go. Life takes over, and the disgusting behavior and of these racists took over, and it destroyed it for me, and I'm not to say that I didn't watch more games or whatever, but I watched it with a different mindset. So I said, that did nothing for my mental health. Like I'm not having fun anymore. I'm just sitting here fucking watching the game. And whereas so many of us, we use sports as an outlet, whether you're playing it or whether you're watching it, and it's not fair. It's not fair. And so I was like, okay, well, let me start writing stuff down. But before I go any further, I'm going to read you what Black fatigue is according to Mary Frances Winters. The original concept of Black fatigue describes the extreme cumulative exhaustion and physical, mental, and spiritual toll that systemic racism, microaggressions, and daily discrimination take on Black people. It refers to the generational trauma and the constant energy required to navigate a society not built to support Black individuals. Let me say that again. It refers to the generational trauma and the constant energy required to navigate a society that's not built for us. Think about that. The energy, the constant energy. We have to constantly be on. You know, like, I gotta take a breath. you know, and so it started me thinking about like different topics. You know, of course, there's George Floyd. You know, George Floyd, when that happened with George Floyd, and you know, Eric Garner, and different things like that. But I wanted to bring it forward a little bit. You know, and the FIFA was the first thing. The soccer event was the first thing, and then I started processing different things about Khalif Browder, the young man who was wrongfully arrested and lost in the system for 2 years and took his life. And then there's Marcellus Williams, who was falsely convicted of killing a white woman. And until his last breath, they knew he was innocent, and they still would not stay the execution, and they took his life. And I bring up those two instances because I want to tell you that I was hysterical. Like I could not control my emotions through either event. Troy Davis is another one. I mean, I just could not. And we're talking signing petitions and calling, you know, legal representatives and state representatives. I did all the things for some of these young men. And to sit in your living room and witness someone's life being taken. Do you know what that does to you? Could you imagine what it does to you? And then to go a step further, but I got to get up and go to work tomorrow. I have to get up and go to work tomorrow with more people who don't like me in a system that isn't built for me, you know? And so I have to get up in the morning and I have to commute. And the people around me are probably not very fond of me, or you're listening to the conversations that people of other races are having about these situations. I'll never forget the OJ trial when I was walking back to work after the verdict and how I was treated at work when I got back, how the atmosphere was horrendous. And so, you know, I think about people, well, just think about living as a Black person without a mental illness, but living with a mental illness, and you're already living in a dark space. And then every single day, multiple times a day, you have to be faced with, I have the monster, but then I have to be faced with other monsters, you know, and I'm supposed to survive that. You know, like how much medication do you take to numb you to the evils and the ills of society that isn't built for you, that doesn't want you there? And so I brought up the Khalif Browder and the Marcellus Williams cases because those are two cases that broke my heart and soul. And they were events that took place during a time when I was in spirals, in a bad place. And I had to live with it. I had to eat it and I had to go on. I didn't have time to stop and grieve. You know, I had to go to work or go to whatever the next day and pretend that I was okay when I wasn't. I just watched a man lose his life when he never did anything. He was innocent, or here's a young boy who never got to live the full life because they lost him in the system for arresting him wrongly in the first place. And so I want people outside of our community to understand that when we are walking down the street, we're not just carrying the everyday. We're carrying something that is so much heavier than, my hair didn't come out right, or, oh, my air conditioning was out for like a day and a half or 2 days or something. So, but in addition to the air conditioner being out for 2 days, I'm watching the murder rate, go up in a Black community, near where I live. So we're not just walking down the street and we're not just waking up and carrying our everyday. We're carrying so much more, and it's exhausting. The constant energy of trying to survive in a world that is not built for you. Imagine. Just imagine. And then, with the Eric Garner and George Floyd cases, just imagine that you're going through the turmoil watching something like this go down on TV. And then you go outside and you go to the supermarket, and you hear this person standing next to you is talking about what a horrible person he was and he deserved to die. And then another person saying, oh, well, he's a piece of crap and blah, blah, blah. And you people do this and you people do that. And you watch how the cashier interacts with you because of the current event. Exhausting. Ma'am, I just came here to get some cold cuts. I didn't come here for all this bullshit, And so, I had to really think about how it affects us that are living with mental illnesses. And when I started this platform, and I say this all the time, we live with 24/7 PTSD as a Black community. We're constantly under post-traumatic stress disorder and present stress disorder. You know what I'm saying? Because, well, look, just like it says here, Black fatigue frequently triggers severe mental health conditions like complex trauma, PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Constant triggers, and I don't think that the world understands how heavy that is. And then you want to add to that we can't get proper medical coverage. We're going to add to that there's only 4% psychologists that are African American in the system. 1% psychiatrists are Black in the system. So we don't have people to talk to that understand our experiences. So who do we talk to? We're discriminated against in pharmacies. Well, you can't take this medicine, you can't take that medicine. They're scared of you farming, taking medication. But we're not. Let's look at the percentages. We're not the ones that are abusing some of these pharmaceuticals, these medications. But it doesn't matter, because society says that we're the bad guy, and society says that we have to be watched. And so we have to live with this. You can't get proper health care. There are people in this world who have no idea that even exists. I did an interview recently, and the woman that I was talking to, who was amazing, she just had no idea that some of the things that I talked about were going on. And I'm like, it must be nice. It must be really, really nice to live in a world where you don't have to worry about what's coming to your door or what's going to be on the news or how you're going to be treated if you're going to make it back home. And so that's an updated story that brought me to this after the FIFA A couple of weeks ago, there was a young black boy who went swimming with his so-called friends, and he was paddleboarding. He was supposed to be going paddleboarding, but he couldn't swim. And when this white family came upon him, he was screaming for help. And you can hear the friends in the background um, telling him they were going to let him drown, and they didn't care, and they brought him there for that, and different things like that. And this family had to save him, save his life, essentially. If they had not have turned up, I don't know what would have happened. His name was Marquez, and when I saw the video the first time, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm like, they got to be playing, And I listened again, and I'm like, but by the end of the video, even the father of the family, the white father of the family that saved him, he couldn't believe. He was like, there was some racist actions going on. They were going to let him die, and the wife is just, stunned. And I'm thinking, could you imagine? You think your kid is going out with their friends and they're going to go out, have a good time, and come home safely, and they don't. Which leads me to Nolan Wells, the young man in Mississippi who had gone partying on a boat with some of his friends and lost his life. And we still don't have all of the information. So I'm not drawing conclusions. I'm not giving you answers. I'm not giving you any of that. I'm just saying that he was in a setting where he was one of the only black people there. And the friends around him were white. And he didn't make it home. And so then that adds another element. What do you do when you're in that situation? Because we're all in that situation. I know I've been to corporate events where I'm the only black woman there. There's one black woman and one black man, so they can meet their diversity quota. 50. So, that I've been there and I've done that. And, it's so hard to navigate spaces like that because of hate, because of expectations, of biases, of stereotypes, you know. So this young man, and both young men in this case, went out with their white friends and had no idea that they weren't safe, and one, by the grace of God, made it home, and the other young man didn't make it home. And like I said, I don't know what happened to the young man, but I know that in the past 2 months, we've had so many cases of young black people disappearing, young black people, you know, uh, supposedly committing suicide, um, found hanging from trees, but they commit suicide. So I just, I just want people to understand that we're living with a heavy feeling, and that not everybody experiences. Not everybody experiences that, and we're tired. We're really, really tired of the fighting. We're really tired of the having to always be on, because you always have to be one step ahead. You know, um, I was talking to someone and they were talking about some things going on at their job, and they're training a new person, and they had to express to the person, like, you can't do what the other person does because you're not viewed the same as that person that's outside of your race. So you have to operate differently. And that hurt my feelings, because you have someone who gave up everything to, get their degree and go through all the schooling and get their dream job. And you still have to put on. You still have to put on. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? And so, I said I was going to bring up a couple of examples. So I go in a store and I notice that the same person is behind me everywhere I go. Every aisle I go to or every section I go to, this person. Now, I know that you're not interested in me, sir. So I know that you're not following me to try to talk to me because you haven't said anything the whole time. You've just been watching, and every time I turn around, you pretend that you're shopping too. Why? Or when I get to the register and the person is rude for no reason and they want to put the money down on the thing instead of handing it to me in my hand, or they're just not interested in any type of customer service, professional customer service at all. Why? Sections of restaurants. Now, I know people think that doesn't exist anymore, but it does. It's just a little bit more sly than it used to be. But there are still times when you go in restaurants nowadays where you have all the blacks in one section. You do. And they may sprinkle in a couple of other races just to, not make it look bad, but it still happens. And all you want to do is go out with your family to eat. That's all you wanted to do was go out to eat. And what if you have your kids with you and your kids start asking questions about stuff like that? There goes dinner. There goes dinner. There goes the ambiance of just going out and have a family dinner. Or your mother and father are treated poorly because they're black. Or blacks don't tip, so we're not going to give them the proper service. It was just dinner. It was just dinner. So black fatigue is real, everyone. You can look it up on Google and you can see that, no, it didn't go away years ago. We still live with it every single day. We still have trauma-filled sessions, in our past, in our future, in our present. And it's not easy to live with. And it's not easy to live with because, especially since we don't get the help that we need to teach us the skills that we need to live with it. And one of the episodes that I have coming up, I'm going to talk about the high rate of suicide. It seems to be on an uptick that nobody's paying attention to, but I am, among young people, among young black men. But we know why, like the why is, well, yeah, maybe they were living with depression. Maybe they were living with bipolar disorder. Maybe they were living with schizophrenia. But on top of that, they are living with the fatigue of being black in America. And the rate is not going to go down. The suicide rate is not going to decrease. The rate of murders, racial murders, are not going to go down until we start acknowledging it and until we start speaking out on it. And this is why it's so important for me to do the work that I do, because I want you to understand how important it is for you to get out there and talk to somebody. If you have to take the medication, take the medication. If you have to write it down. But just do whatever it takes to get that off of you. Because we can't we can't survive like this. We cannot survive like this, because that means that you're constantly putting it on. I told my friend the other day that I'm such an angry person. And I know that if something, I get really scared sometimes because I know it's going to take the slightest thing that someone is going to do to me and it's going to set me off. But that's because I keep letting it build up, and I keep letting it build up, and I don't say anything. or I'm scared to say something because I don't know what the consequences will be for the people around me, or, whatever. But those rates aren't going to go down. And since they're not working on decreasing those rates, we have to continue to work on getting the help that we deserve. We deserve it. And that means that it would be nice to have a Black psychiatrist. It would be nice to have a Black psychologist. But if you don't have one, that doesn't mean that they're not excellent psychologists and psychiatrists out there that are of other races. I can tell you that that's absolutely true. Some of my best therapists were not Black women, but they were amazing women. So find a therapist that you are comfortable with, that you trust, and just get it off of you little by little, because we're dying. We are dying, and we're dying because we're in a world where it wasn't built for us. It wasn't built for us, and they're still not building it for us. So they're not concerned about us. So we have to be concerned about each other. So please, get the help that you need. Get the help that you deserve. And if you need help with that, you know that you can always contact me. I do it every day. There are people that reach out to me anonymously, or people that I know that reach out and they're looking for therapists. Doesn't matter what state you're in, what country you're in, I will help you as much as I can to find some help. So there's no excuse. I'm here. It's my thing. Y'all know I love a Google. I love Google. So I can find you someone to talk to. Okay? So make sure that you are following me everywhere. I'm on Substack now, so you guys can go on Substack and sign up. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Threads. Threads is hysterical, y'all. But I'm on Threads too, as, of course, Diva with Depression on every page. If you want to buy me a coffee, y'all know that I love my coffee, okay? I love my coffee. But if you'd like to buy me a coffee and contribute to the cause, I would be honored. I would love that. But most of all, I want you guys to keep your peace. Keep yourself safe. Keep yourself healthy. And if you can't keep yourself healthy by yourself, then go find a way to get assistance with it. I'm always here for you. Thank you for listening, and stay peaceful, my friends. Okay? Bye. Sometimes